recording. Is no okay? I'm asleep.
Stay home, you have breakfast. My donut days are over.
But I still eat latkes.
That's a cat mix.
Okay. Today we're going to start at the Mishnah on Lamed Dalet Amud Beis. It's 34b. I'm going to try to finish the chapter, so that's why on Sunday we can start the new chapter.
Oh boy. Okay, let's do it.
Let's see if we can cover ground. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn Torah every day, especially on Hanukkah, and the schus of our learning we have Beis Hamikdash. So the Mishnah says like this: Yesh chayav al ma'aser shayre pata al ma'aser atzmei. There's a possibility that a person will be more responsible for what his animal does than for what he himself does. Then there's the other option: Pata al ma'aser shayre v'chayav al ma'aser atzmei. He could be exempt for what his animal does, but he's responsible for what he does. Those are the options: case A and case B. We should take a look. We start answering case B. Kate said, how is this? Shayre should be that's the second case. If his animal embarrasses someone, Potter, he doesn't have to pay for that embarrassment. What would happen? It ripped off someone's clothing or something, because it gored it, and then the horns got stuck. I don't know, whatever the example is. But who should be ish? But if he embarrasses someone, then chayiv, then he's going to have to pay for that. So it's only if he himself would cause embarrassment that he has to pay, not if his animal does, not if his property does. Let's say his ox ends up blinding his slave or knocking the tooth out of his slave. So pater means that the slave doesn't go free because of that. But if he does that to his slave, he blinds his slave or knocks the tooth out, then he's going to be chayiv. The commentaries say that we learn this from Ishkiyakes Einavde and not Shayre, right? Let's say his ox makes a bruise. Now, what does Avav and Imai mean? Does it mean his own father? Yeah, it means his own father. It doesn't mean the animal's father. It means the father of the master, of the owner of the ox. So he's chayiv. The owner, right? He has to pay for the damages because it was his ox that caused damage. It doesn't matter if it's a family member or if it's a parent, he has to pay for that damage. But if he bruises his father and his mother, he's exempt. Remember the rule? Because he has a death penalty there. So we exempt him from the monetary payment. So, okay. If his ox lights by dragging a flame or a lantern or something over to a haystack, and it catches on fire and burns it. On Shabbos, he has to pay for the damages. But who should look at Shabbos? Rashi points out he only has to pay chatzi nezek because that's an abnormal case. But if he lights a haystack on fire on Shabbos, it's going to be part of Nishim Mischai Benashi because he has a death penalty.
Why is it going to be part of Mischai Benashi? It says here, but it's not the one before. We're assuming it's
no, it's covering both.
Yeah, okay. Just double check.
Yeah. Tani Rabavo Kamei Rabbi Yechanan. Rabavo, who's a student of Rabbi Yechanan, he taught the following in front of Rabbi Yechanan. We enter into the laws of Shabbos here because the Mishnah mentioned Shabbos. He says that on Shabbos everything needs to be constructive, not destructive. If any malacha was done in a destructive way, even demolishing a house, seiser, is only going to be chayav if it's seiser al manas livnei. It has to be demolishing in order to rebuild. There's no such thing as a malacha that you chayav for if it's just destructive, with the exception, Rabbi Bo says, of making a bruise, and making a fire. That's destructive, but it's still chayav. Amalei Rabbi Yechanan tells to Rabbi Bo, says Puktani Lebra. Go say that outside. Read this one of these books. It says Save your breath for cooling off your porridge. Anyway, that's something like this. This is not. Don't mention that over here. That's not accurate.
In the case that the destruction without the construction, wouldn't it be a violation of the rabbis?
Yeah, it would still be a the Rabbanan, right? Okay. Now, it says in a Mishnah. That statement that you said, that bruising and kindling a fire, even if it's destructive, is going to be chayav. That's not a Mishnah. And if you want to say that it is, then what we're going to explain it will be the bruise was because you needed the blood that came out of the bruise for the dog to eat, and mavir so there was a constructive purpose, constructive value, and the fire was because you needed the ashes. You needed the ashes for something. They use ashes for different things. They use the ashes. We'll see in the Gemara. They use it for takes away an itch, but it could also be used for other things, for ink, whatever things that you need. Tanan, starting in the Mishnah, should look at the Gaddish b'Shabbos chayev. The ox causes the haystack, the granary. Gaddish is a haystack, right? On Shabbos. So he has to pay for the damage. But if he causes that fire, then he's going to be exempt. The fact that it teaches this, it has to be that he is similar to the ox. You see, when we do a contrast, we'd like to only have one variable, exactly the one that we're dealing with, that he is different than ox. But everything else we would like to be the same. That's how experiments are supposed to be. So here in this contrast, we're saying that he is different than his ox. It has to have everything else similar, except that it's a person versus ox. So just like the ox, of course, does not need the fire. It doesn't need the fire. It's not cooking. It's not like those like the bears, like the what is it? Those tails that they have. So afunami delay kabayla. So it must be that the person also doesn't need it. We say that he's pater because he has a death penalty. Now, 1 second. If it's not considered constructive, why does he have the death penalty? It must be Rabbi Vo is right that you don't need the death penalty when it comes to chayvel maver. That's a raya to Rabbi Vo. It's a kasha and Rabbi Yochanan. Because it needs to be similar to the ox, just like the ox wasn't necessary for some future use. So too by the person. Nevertheless, we said that he's going to be exempt, obviously because he's chayiv misa, even though it wasn't constructive. Gemara says, like, you have to do it exactly the opposite. You say that since he needed it, so the case is the ox also needed it. How does the ox need the fire? Or is he cooking up his porridge? Mahu the kabayle, absharik the kabayle. What is the case where the ox needs the fire? Amalei Ravavya, Hachamayaskin and Bashar Pikeya, talking about an ox, a smart ox. This will make a great kids book. She also lay Nashicha Begabay. They have the ox dressed in a suit and tie and everything, a bow tie. That he got a bite on his back, a bite from something, I don't know what. The kabayla miklay, and he needs to burn the haystack. The igander bekutman, he wants to roll in the ashes. So he knows what he needs. So the ashes are going to take away the bite. How do you know that that's the case? That this is what he's doing it for? I mean, does he send an email? The ox that says no. The labasa dekalia kamagander betkutma. You see, that's what he did. After the fire, he went and rolled in the ashes. Is there such a thing that there's a smart ox like this? It says it happens sometimes. The Hutur David Beirav Papa. There was an ox that was in the house of Rav Papa David Kivan Leichinche, that he had a toothache. And I don't know if that's the molars or the other teeth. I don't know which one it is. Ayel, he goes upaskil in his isa. He knocks off the cover of the vessel. He drank beer. Apparently, that's what they used to do for toothaches. They would say in Russia that they don't mind if they lose all their teeth, but they always need to have one tooth because they need an excuse to drink. For the toothache. So okay. So and he got healed. So you see that he knows the ox knows what he's doing, and it's possible. The rabbi said to Rav Papa, how can you say that our standard here is like the person is the person, and the animal is going to be similar to the person, just like the person has some intention for constructive use. So to the animal has some intention for constructive use. If that's the case, then what's going to come out is another case of the Mishnah. It says that Sheir should be if his ox intends to do, if his ox causes embarrassment, we didn't say intend. If ox causes embarrassment, we assume that the ox can't intend to embarrass. Doesn't have even the concept. Doesn't even know. Is that from Dr. Stein? Very cool. So the ox can't intend to do that. I heard once a lecture from he's anti-Israel, Chomsky, but he's a linguist. Had a very interesting comment about the power of speech. He said that animals talk, but animals don't have any creative speech. They can only mimic. And he says similar to counting. Animals can count. They don't have the concept of numbers. So in other words, an animal can know that this food is in the fourth bucket. And then he can learn like how to count till 4, or he can be even more. But he doesn't have the concept of the infinity of numbers, that you can add 1 and it will never end. There's always a +1. The concept of numbers he doesn't have, even though he can count. He also has the speech, but he doesn't have the concept of speech where you can have creative speech. You can say like poetry, something to create something new. They can copy sounds and all of that, but to say something new that was never said, that part they don't have. So I think maybe when it talks about medaber, that a human speaks. Animals also speak, but there's a different concept of speech that the animals don't have. Anyway, over here we're talking about an animal having embarrassment or understanding that there's a concept of embarrassment. The Gemara is clear, and the animal doesn't have any clue what social embarrassment is, what's acceptable social behavior and what would be embarrassed. So who should be ish, but if a person causes embarrassment, is chayiv. Now you want to say that sheirei dum yidideh. You want to say that the ox is similar to the person. Why? How does an ox intend to cause embarrassment? Do you think the ox knows that you're going to get embarrassed if the tichel falls off or something, or if your clothing gets how does the ox even know that that's an issue, he doesn't have any of these social what's acceptable? We're talking about not that he knows about embarrassment, but he knows he intends to do damage. And now here comes the chiddush, the master taught that you're chayiv for embarrassment, even if you don't intend to embarrass, as long as you intended to do damage. If you didn't intend to do damage at all, then you're not chayiv for embarrassment. But you don't actually have to have intention. Talking about a human doesn't have to have intention to embarrass to be chayiv for embarrassment. As long as he intended to cause damage, then he's chayiv for all of those things: nezek, tsar, sheves, ripay, and baishas, for the pain and for the loss of work and for the doctor bills, and also for embarrassment.
That reminded me of when the 2 men are fighting, and then the woman tries to do damage to save her husband.
Right. Right. Yes. That's where we learn embarrassment from.
What if you train your ox to like hurt somebody?
Yeah. So that we're understanding that an ox can actually intend to hurt, and when it intends to hurt, it should be chayiv for embarrassment. If it would be a human, but because it's an ox, it's patur from embarrassment. Yeah. You're asking about like a bullfight, like the such a thing, like sure, it's done. That's going to come up. I don't remember what daf, but there's a gemara about sure it's done.
Somebody wanted to kill somebody and
right.
train their ox to.
Right.
You see him in the red shirt.
Okay. Rava redoes the explanation that we just gave for our Mishnah. So far, the explanation we gave for the Mishnah is that we're dealing with some sort of intelligent ox, or that there is some intention that the ox has.
You had a muad and you train it to not to attack people.
Does it go back to being a tam? So I think we said that a muad that plays with children is considered not a muad. If it can play with the children, right? Something like that. We had two opinions over there, but that was one of them. So that would be what do they call it when they
Recalibrate.
no, when they take someone they jail.
How do you do if it doesn't have any children?
On the street, plays with the neighborhood children. Yeah. Okay, so Rava Amar Masnisin B'Shagig. Rava says the Mishnah is talking about B'Shagig. Rava adjusts the entire Mishnah. He says it's following the opinion of the house of Chizkiah. The Tanna B'Chizkiah Maka the Maka Behema. If a person causes damage to an animal, or a person causes damage to another person, called murder or whatever, so Ma Maka Behema, just when a person causes damage to an animal, what happens when a person causes damage to an animal? We don't go through all of those details. That did he do it on purpose? Did he do it by mistake? Was it on his way up the ladder before he fell, or was it on his way down the ladder? Was he pulling the thing on the roof this way, or was he pushing it that way? Which that's a huge difference in Kamara Makas. If he's Chayiv Galus, if he has to go to exile, depending on which way he's going up and down. He didn't make any of those differences. He said that he has to pay. So if that's the case, Af Maka Adam, also someone that kills a man, so too, I know when it comes to Misa, you're going to make those, when it comes to capital punishment, you're going to make those differences. But to exempt him from money because of what just happened, and it's considered a capital offense, he's still going to be exempt no matter which direction he was going, up or down. So in other words, what we were thinking before, that the reason why he's going to be exempt from paying in the Mishnah, because when he causes a fire, he lights a fire, he's going to be exempt because he's Chayiv Misa, because he did it on Shabbos. That's not necessarily the case. He's going to be exempt from paying even if there is no Chayiv Misa, because he did it in a way that he was mekalkel, he was destructive, and there is no Chayiv Misa there, but it doesn't matter, because that type of activity would incur a capital offense, so automatically you're exempt from the payment as well. So it's not really the carrying out of the capital offense, of the capital punishment. It's the capital offense which exempts him. That's what we're learning from this pasuk. According to Rava, we've just resolved all of our question that we had on the Yechanan or whatever.
Should have brought him first.
Then we went to learn all those interesting cases. Amalei Rabbanan the Rava. The rabbis tell Rava, how could you say it's talking about b'shaygeg, where he's going to be exempt from the actual capital punishment, even though the offense was one that would incur capital punishment if it would have been done differently? How could you say that it's talking about unintentional? But it says that he's judged by his life. It's a capital punishment. Katani, that's what it says. It says Hachi Kamar. So Rava responds, because if it would have been done intentionally, it would have been a capital punishment. What would the case be over there? Only if he needed it for the ashes, because it has to be constructive, not destructive. So over here, b'shaygeg is also going to be pater, exempt. Even though he doesn't get the capital punishment, but he's still exempt from what the capital punishment would have exempted him of. Okay, it's a chiddush. Then we have a new Mishnah. You have one ox that's chasing another ox. And the pursued, the one that was running away, gets damaged. Okay. Now, not the pursuer, the pursued, the nizik, the victim. So the victim says, Sharche Hizek, victim's owner, says, your ox caused my ox damage. I saw them running, and they turned the corner, and now look at him. He has a broken leg. And this one says, it wasn't my ox. It happened to be. He tripped over a pebble, tripped over a rock right around the corner, and that's where the injury came from. It wasn't my ox. My ox chased him. I know he chased him, but didn't do the damage. I'm exempt. Yeah, exactly. The rule is, you can't extract money when the other person has the same claim that you have. You say this, he says that. It's your word against his word. So you prove it. If you can't prove it, so then you can't extract money from someone without
Right.
proof. And just say, I think you owe me money, so pay it. We're gonna see in the Gemara, is it I think you owe me money, or is it you definitely owe me money? And the other guy's responding, I definitely do not. Or each one is saying, I think you owe me, another one saying, I think I don't. But we'll see in the Gemara. That's you have two oxen that are chasing one ox. Now we're talking about that they're two different owners to the two oxen. This guy says
It was yours was close.
that your ox caused the damage. I guess they're telling to each other. The pursuers, owners are arguing. It was your ox, wasn't mine. Your ox always does this. I know. I could tell where he was running. And so the rule is Shnei and Peturim. They're both going to be exempt because when the guy comes to claim, each one says it was the other guy. And you can't extract money just because you think it's one of them or whatever. Let's say, excuse me. Let's say that both oxen were owned by one person. So automatically, it doesn't matter. Shneim chayavim. They both have to pay. Now, what is it? Who's the both over there? It means that he's going to be able to take from, the Gemara is going to explain this. It means he's going to be able to take from, if it's a tam, then he has to take from one of the animals itself. Yeah, well, we'll see in the Gemara. It's a little complex in the Gemara. If it's a muad, then you wouldn't use the word shnei and chayav, and you would just say chayav, because it's the owner that has to pay it. It has nothing to do with the ox. And there is only one owner. Shneim means the two oxen have to pay. It means because the short time you take migufay, the payment comes from the actual damaging ox.
You don't have to sell for the muad. You have to sell
for the muad. Has nothing to do with that.
You just pay cash.
Yeah.
The two pursuing ox, one is a
We'll see now. Very good. The following part of the Mishnah and Hillel are discussing. Okay, it says, let's say one of the pursuing oxes was big and one was small. Now, because it's a tam, we were learning this yesterday. If the pursuer is a Toyota Corolla, and or if it's a Rolls Royce type of ox, so then you might get less payment or more payment depending, because you take from the value of the ox. So echad gadol v'echad katan. Hanizek, the victim says, gadol hizek. Victim's owner says, it was the big ox, it was the Rolls Royce that damaged mine, and therefore I should take the full half of the payment. Amazekaimer, the pursuer, the perpetrator says, like Yalakat Nezik knows my Toyota Corolla, you have to split it in half, okay? So you only get half of whatever that's worth. Let's say one was a tam and one was a muad. This was the case Hill was thinking. Let's say one is a tame and one is forewarned. One has already did this 3 times. Hanizekaimer, the victim says, muad hizek. He wants to get the full payment. So he says it was the one that was forewarned. And the perpetrator says that it was the tame one. So therefore, I only want to pay half. So if you want to get the full payment, you have to prove it, which one it was. To go look at the horns and find if to look at the DNA that you find inside inside the whatever the horns. penetrated over there. Hayo hanezakin shnayim. Let's say there were two victims. Echad gadol v'echad katan. One was a big victim and one was a small one. Remember, there were two oxen also. Mazikin shnayim, and there were two damaging oxes as well. Echad gadol v'echad katan. One big one, one small one. So there's a Rolls Royce on each side and a Toyota Corolla on each side. And the victim says, "Gadol has a guess a gadol v'katan as a katan." The Rolls Royce banged into my Rolls Royce, and the Toyota Corolla banged into the Toyota Corolla. Amazakaimer, the perpetrator says, "Like katan as a gadol." No, my Toyota Corolla hit the Rolls Royce. I know you're going to get half of the Toyota Corolla. I know. All right. And v'gadol as a katan, my Rolls Royce hit the Toyota Corolla. Yeah, I'll pay you whatever that was worth from the Rolls Royce. It'll be fine. The $10. So that's quite an argument there. Echad tam, echad muad. One is a tam, one is a muad. Nizik aimer muad has a gas a gadol. Nizik says that the muad, the forewarned, he damaged my Rolls Royce. I want the full price, full damage for that one. The tam is a katan, and yeah, I know, half price for the Toyota Corolla. Mazik aimer, Mazik says like yala tam is a gadol and muad as a katan. It's the opposite. The tam hit your Rolls Royce. You're only going to get half the payment for the big for the expensive one, and the muad you'll get the full payment for the cheaper one. Muad as a katan. So then I might say the same rule is that you have to bring a proof if you want to extract more money. Reb Chia Barabba says, Chia Barabba is a student of Rabbi Yochanan. Yeah, a major student of Rabbi Yochanan. Mara Bracha says that he reviewed all his teachings of Rabbi Yochanan every 30 days, and Rabbi Yochanan would correct him. Calls him like the great Rabbi Chia Barabba. So he say, Meres, this Mishnah teaches me. In other words, what's the chiddush of this Mishnah? The chiddush is that I have another opinion, a dissenting opinion that says different, and we're saying that we don't go like that opinion. What's the other opinion? So he say, Meres, Chalkan alav chaver val sumchas. We're arguing on sumchas. Sumchas is a student of Reb Meir. And he has a very unique opinion when it comes to conflicts, monetary conflicts. He holds that if there's a monetary conflict, you have to just split it. According to Sumchas, in our Mishnah, we would say that each of them take half. Let's say the first case. There was an ox that was chasing another ox. The Mazik says that your ox got damaged on a rock. And the victim says, no, it was your ox that gored it, and that's why look at its broken foot. So according to Sumchas, the guy would have to pay half. Now, if it's a tam, he would have to pay a quarter, which is a half of a half. But that the claim would be in half. We said that the guy doesn't have to pay anything. Why? Because we said you have to bring a proof. So obviously, the sages argue on Sumchas.
Why they say chaver? It's interesting.
Chaver of the friends of Sumchas. Yeah.
Just say Chalkan alav something.
Chalkan alav chaver of al Sumchas. Yeah, there's like a double alav on there. The alav is repeated. Chaver of Chalkan al Sumchas. So that's on the Zoysim Meres, yeah. Okay, the Amar, he says, Mam namut b'saf Chalkan. Amar lei Rab Abba bar Mamal or Rab Chia bar Abba. Rab Abba bar Mamal says directly to Rab Chia bar Abba, he says, Amar Simchas afilu bari bari. The Simchas say that you divide it even when it's bari bari. Bari bari means definite with a definite. Each one has a definite claim. I would understand.
I know that you're in.
Yeah, I would understand if Simchas would say this when each one is claiming, I don't know, maybe, I don't know. So, you said you don't know. Oh, okay, so just pay half. But if the guy says it's 100% that I don't owe you, and the other guy is 100% that how could you extract money? Here, you're according to Sumchas, you would extract half. Now, if Sumchas wouldn't agree to this, then we would ask, so what's the chiddush of our Mishnah? Our Mishnah is maybe Sumchas holds that also. So we want our Mishnah to be a chiddush where there's a machlaikas, that this is following the sages, not Sumchas. I could have had another opinion. Amalayan, so he says, yeah, Sumchas would actually say the same thing. When the guy is 100% sure that he doesn't owe, Sumchas would still say that he has to pay half. In Amar Sumchas Afila Bari Bari. Says Mimai. How do you know that? Says the Masnisin Bari Barihu. Because our Mishnah is Bari Bari. They're definite. Diktani, if you read the Mishnah, it says Zermer Shar Chizek. This one says your ox causes damage. Zermer Loiki. Another guy says it's not so. He didn't say maybe. He said clearly it's not so. Maska Flora Papa. Papa has a question. I don't know how Papa has a question to. How did he? Papa wasn't Bavel. I think Rabba Bar Mamal and Rabbi Bar Abba were in Eretz Yisrael. Okay, so he asked the question: Midareisha bebari bari. If the first case of the Mishnah is when the guy's 100% definite that he doesn't know, say fanami bari bari, then the end of the Mishnah is probably also when he's definite that he doesn't know. Ema seifa. Let's go further. What we're going to introduce now is that there is a slight payment, even though there's an argument. You'll see. If one of the animals was big and one of them was small. Nizakaimer, the victim says, Gadol Hizik. It was the large animal that caused the damage. And therefore, when you pay me, you have to pay from the animal itself. I get half of the large animal. Mazakaimer, the perpetrator says, like Yalakat Nizik, no, it was only the small animal that caused the damage. Or Echatam Vechadmor, let's say one was a tame and one was forewarned. Nizakaimer, the victim says, Muad Hizik, I get the full price because it was the forewarned one. Mazakaimer, the perpetrator says, like Yalatam Hizik, it says, if you want to get the full price, you want to get the expensive one, you have to bring a proof. What would happen if he doesn't bring a proof? Got to talk this out. So what would happen if not? So shakil kadamer mazik, then you would end up taking the way the mazik said.
So
you're still going to get half price, or you're going to get from the smaller animal, one of those, whichever the case was. Name it Tevli Tivta de Rabba Barnasan. This is going to come out a question on Rabba Barnasan. Damar, Rabba Barnasan taught. Tanu chitam v'haidalei b'sayrim. If a guy comes to another person and he claims, you owe me wheat. I gave you wheat, you owe me wheat. The guy says, you never gave me wheat, you gave me barley. I owe you barley. The rule is potter. Now, what's going on over there?
But then here's a might of a mix.
That case was originally from there's a Mishnah, and then there's a Rabba Barnasan that repeats what the Mishnah says. The Gemara is going to explain after. But originally this would be, it's not a din of might of a mixas. Might of a mixas means if you admit to partial, if you have a partial admittance, you have to make he's considered a kaifer akal. He's considered he denies everything. Very good. If someone says, you owe me $100, the guy says, I owe you 50. So he has to make a shvur, he has to make an oath. Because we think that really he owes the 100, but he doesn't have it, so he's delaying. And so he's just saying, I owe you 50, and we don't want him to do that. So the Torah puts a minat Torah, he has to make a swear that he only owes. But let's say he says, you owe me wheat. Another guy says, no, I owe you barley. So barley is cheaper than wheat. So did he just do a partial admittance? We say no. We say because he didn't admit to anything that the person said. He denies everything that the person said, and he admitted to something else that the guy never even claimed.
He says Shorcha Hezik.
So Shorcha Hezik. So over here, he says the big one caused the damage. He says no, it wasn't the big one. He denies entirely the big one, and he's admitting to the small one. Now, there's what Rabba Barnasan is adding in over here. This is what it seems. Rabba Barnasan is adding in is that the guy was Michael by Tarno Chitim V'Haidalei B'Sayrim, and he claims you owe me wheat. And the guy denies it 100%. He says, but I owe you barley. The guy says, I don't want your barley. I want the wheat. So really the teveya,
doesn't want to have
the plaintiff is agreeing to forgo on the barley. He wants the wheat. So why over here are we saying that the guy would have to pay the amount of the tam if the plaintiff would forgo on that claim? If there was no claim there, it says that wasn't what I was interested in. It's a kasha and Rabba Barnasan that says that he's pater, that he's exempt from such a thing, from paying for the tam, the lower price. And over here we're saying that he has to pay it. Ella, rather we have to adjust it. Now what we're going to need to adjust over here is like this. If he says definitely that you don't owe me this, you only owe me that, so then that would be a case of tanuchitim v'haidalei b'sayrim. But if he says, I'm not 100% sure, but I just don't know for sure. Or I don't know which one. So then it's not a Tanuchitim because he himself doesn't know. So then we can, if there's any Shema here, if there's any doubt, Bari means definite, Shema means doubt. If there's any doubt,
Means perhaps or
yeah, Shema means perhaps or maybe, and Bari means for sure. So if there's any doubt, then we could say, we can explain why over here he's Chayiv, and it would fit with Rabba Bar Nassim. So Ella, we were thinking that the case was that it was a definite, Bari Ubari, both were definite. The defendant and the plaintiff were both definite about what's owed. And now we're asking, but if that's the case, then it would contradict Rabba Bar Nassim. Ella de Kamma, rather we have to say Nizik Shema. The plaintiff says, I'm not sure, but I think you owe me from the bigger one. Kamar Mazik, the defendant says, Bari, he says, no, definitely not. And so the Mazik would pay his. Omida Seifa Nizik Shema, Mazik Bari. Now, since we've just established that this case is going to be obviously where the Nizik is, the plaintiff says, I think you owe me from the bigger one. And the Mazik says, I definitely owe you from the smaller one. So then Reishanami Nizik Shema Mazik Bari. Then it would probably in the first case as well, where there was one chasing the other one. And we see that there's a bruise. So the Nizik, the plaintiff says, I think you owe me. And the Mazik says, I definitely don't. It was a rock. Vamar Sumchas, Afilu Baha, it's Lashminan, the light. Sumchas would obviously say, even by this one, that it would be they divide it. Now, 1 second. The Mazik, the defendant over here says, I definitely do not owe you. And the Nizik says, I think you might owe me. Now, our Mishnah says that he doesn't have to pay. But why is our Mishnah saying that? Because Sumchas says that he has to pay half. Would Sumchas really say that he has to pay half when the guy says, I definitely don't owe you, and the plaintiff doesn't even know if he owes him? Why would he have to pay half? Because I think maybe you owe me money. So it's impossible. So Gemara says, like, Seifa, the last case, you're right, was Nizik Shema Mazik Bari. It was a case where the plaintiff says, perhaps you owe me from the bigger one, and the Mazik says, I definitely owe you from the smaller one. So Reisha, Nizik Bari, Mazik Shema, you switch it around exactly the opposite. The Reisha was talking about where the plaintiff says, you definitely owe me because your ox caused the damage. And the defendant, the Mazik, he says, I'm not so sure if I owe you. I think it might have been a rock. So for the year, Simchus would have said that he has to pay half. We say that he doesn't have to pay at all because he has to. The Nizik still has to prove it. Just because you're claiming and it sounds definite doesn't mean that you really have proof of that. So the Gemara says 1 second. But now, if that's the case, then the Reisha is exactly the opposite of the Seifa. The first case of the Mishnah is the opposite of who's saying Bari, who's definite, and who's the perhaps and the maybe. It's exactly opposite. So the Gemara answers, don't worry about that. Amri, they say, Bari v'shema Bari chad milsa. That's the same thing. Okay. Bari shema Bari trei milinino.
Rabbi,
Yeah.
none of these cases do they say, they like, make a shua and then yachloku a certain way. None of them. It's just, it says, I don't know this ox. They don't know if it's your ox. So why don't they just, where wasn't each ox? Give us
Taisvis gets into this stuff about the shuas and stuff. Yeah.
Seem like
Yeah.
They always pay half.
Yeah. If it's either a Bari and Bari, or as long as the Nizik is not so far what we understood, as long as the plaintiff, one that's claiming the money, is not a maybe, and the other one is not a definite, and the defendant isn't a definite, then it's going to be, according to Simchas, half and half. Okay, so we say that Bari and Shema and Bari, even though we're switching who's saying what, but considering that the same case, but a Bari and Shema Bari, that we didn't want to put them into the Mishnah because that would be like totally different. Bari means definite, Shema means maybe. Okay. Gufa, we learned before. Amar Rabbi Bar Nassan. We're going back to analyze what we learned from Rabbi Bar Nassan. If one person claims, plaintiff says, you owe me wheat. And the other guy says, I don't owe you wheat, but I owe you barley. So he's exempt. My Kamash Malan. Why? What's Rabbi Bar Nassan explaining? Tanina. We have it in a Mishnah. It's actually a Mishnah. So I don't need an Amira to repeat a Mishnah and make it look like it's his own statement. So the Gemara says, if it would just be the Mishnah, Hava Amina, I would have thought, when it says Pater, I could have thought that maybe he's exempt from the wheat, but he has to pay the barley. Kamash Malan, it comes to teach me, the Pater Legamri, that he doesn't have to pay the barley either, because the guy says, I forgo on any payment of barley. Tanan. What we learned in the Mishnah. The Gemara doesn't have the patience to spell it out because we said it right. It says, etc. If there were two victims over here, one was a big one was a small one, and now they're arguing. The big one hit the big one, the small one hit the small one, the muad hit the big one. And we say that he has to bring a proof. But if he doesn't bring a proof, shakil kadamar mazik, then he has to pay as the way that the defendant admitted to, which was that the smaller one hit the big one. Why did we say that? It's really a case of wheat and barley. The Gemara says, royu lito. That royu lito ve'ein like. How do they translate that? That there's potential here for a payment. The Mishnah means that he is eligible to take payment if he brings proof, but in the absence of the proof, he actually has nothing. So what we thought is that originally the Gemara thought that he's going to have to pay automatically from the lesser amount. The Gemara is saying that no, he doesn't pay automatically from lesser. He still has to have a proof. But the Gemara rejects his previous assumption that the statement, the burden of proof rests on the one who seeks to exact money from his fellow, implies that in the absence of such proof, the damaged party would receive the amount of which the damager admitted. Rather, this statement means only that the damaged party must bring proof in order to collect. But without proof, he receives nothing. This accords with Rabbi Bar Nassan's ruling.
It's not the famous Hamotzi Mechavero. Isn't that?
That's what we're saying. Even though, so we're saying that Hamotzi Mechavero Levaraya applies not only to the bigger payment, but it applies even to the smaller payment as well, because this would fit with Rabbi Bar Nassan. But it says in the Brisa, it says clearly that he has to pay the big one for the small one for the big one, because he didn't bring a proof. The Gemara says the tafas. That's talking about when he actually grabbed the money, and over there, when it's if someone actually goes and confiscates what he thinks he's owed, then the other guy has to bring proof to get it out because of that. Tanan was started in the Mishnah. If there was one animal that was tame and one was a muad, and there's a guy muad, here's a gasagadol v'tamas a cotton. The plaintiff says the big one damaged the big one, and the defendant says that no, it was like yalatamas a gadol v'muad as a cotton. The rule is it's exactly a repeat of the last one. But if he doesn't bring the proof, shakal kadamar mazik, then he's going to take exactly what the mazik said, which was the lesser amount. But my chitin but it's really, according to Rabbi Nassan, is wheat and barley, which he really shouldn't have to take anything in. Shouldn't be able to collect. The Gemara says, that means he's eligible to collect if he would bring a proof. But it says in a brisa that he actually does collect. It says the tafas. That's only when he grabbed it. Okay. Shneim chayavim. If they both oxen belong to one person, they both have to pay. Amali Rabba mi Parzika Ravashi. Rabba mi Parzika says for Rashi, according to this, you don't know which ox caused the damage, but nevertheless you're able to collect. Shmamina shvarim tam sheiziku. If there's two oxen, that one of them caused damage. That means you're allowed to collect from whichever one you want. Now, 1 second, what about Migufay? Gemara says, we're not dealing with the tam, we're dealing with the muad. And so therefore, that's when you collect. Gemara says, even muad, the name of Seifa. That can't be. If it's a muad, let's go further. It says, and if one was big, one was small, and the big one caused the damage, this one says the small one caused the damage. 1 second. The rule is, if it's a muad, what's the difference if it's a tam or a muad? The whole difference between if it's a big one or a small one that caused the damage is only by a tam, because you only pay from the actual animal.
Right.
But if it's a muad, then there's no difference. Why are they arguing about which animal gored the other one? Amalei Sefer B'tam and Reish Muad. Okay, the different parts of the Mishnah. Then the Mishnah is talking about a tam because that's the only way it fits, and the Reish is talking about a muad. That's what we think is an acceptable answer. Amalei Ravacha Saba Ravashi. Ravacha Saba says to Ravashi, can't say that. Iba muadin. If we're dealing with the muad, chayavin. You want to say that they are chayav? Chayav gavrami boyle. They are not chayav. The man is chayav. Vesu. Another question. My shneim. What does it mean? Both of them? Can't be both of them. It means he is chayiv. There's only one owner. It's the opinion of Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva holds. We had a machlekes Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Shmuel that right when the animal gores, when it comes to court, the Rabbi Akiva holds that that he becomes a partner in the perpetrator ox. So therefore, when it says shneim chayavin, that means that he gets from shneim chayav means only if they're both are there. That's what it means. B'time medicinal tavayo. It would only be if both oxen are there. Because he won't be able to push him off. Because if one of the oxen got lost, he can say, I know that my ox caused damage, but that ox isn't here right now. It got lost. If you find it, then so if they're both here, then he can claim. You have to bring a proof that this is the ox that caused damage. But if they're both here, he can say, look, I don't care which ox it was. You have to pay me anyway. There's a lien on it. So one of them has to come to me. But that's only if they're both there. Otherwise, he can say that it's your loss because you owned it. It was you're a partner. Okay. Hadran Allah. Okay. Have a good Shabbos, everyone. Happy Hanukkah.